In the heart of Umuaka, a small village where the red earth met the green hills, lived a boy named Chinedu. He was no one son of wealth or power, only the child of Nneka, a poor widow who sold roasted corn by the roadside. Their hut stood at the edge of the village, near the footpath that led to the river. Chinedu was thin, barefoot, and often hungry, but his eyes carried a quiet strength. While other children laughed and ran with slings in their hands, Chinedu helped his mother fetch water, sweep the compound, and tend to their small garden of okra and yam. He spoke little but listened much, especially when the elders gathered under the big udala tree to share wisdom. The villagers pitied Nneka, but they also whispered, "How long will the boy remain poor?" Some said. "In this world only the rich eat well." But Nneka always smiled and told her son, "Enwam, if a man washes his hands well, he may eat with kings." Those words sank deep into Chinedu's heart. He didn't fully understand them yet, but he repeated them every morning as he faced the rising sun. "I will wash my hands well." Sometimes, after the market closed, Chinedu would watch the palace lights flicker from afar. He wondered what life was like behind those tall carved gates, where the king's laughter echoed and drums never stopped. Yet even in his wonder, he never envied the rich. All he wanted was a chance, a small one, to prove that goodness could shine brighter than gold. Every morning, when the cock crowed and the mist still hugged the hills of Umuaka, Chinedu hurried to the stream with a clay pot balanced on his head. The other boys his age, Obana, Ifani, and Kelechi, often waited for him by the dusty path. But they did not wait to help. "Look at the son of the corn woman," Obana would shout, laughing as he threw pebbles into the bush. "Does the river know your face more than your father's grave?" The boys laughed until their bellies shook, their voices echoing through the trees. Chinedu said nothing. He tightened his grip on the pot and kept walking, his bare feet sinking into the red mud. Once Kelechi pushed him and the pot slipped. It cracked at the base, spilling water onto the path. The others burst into louder laughter. "You can't even carry water without breaking it," they jeered. Chinedu looked at the broken pot for a long moment, his lips trembling, but not from anger. Then he quietly said, "One day I will have enough to buy 10 pots." The other boys laughed harder. "And where will you find the money, poor Chinedu?" Obana sneered. "From my clean hands," Chinedu replied softly. They did not understand what he meant, and they didn't care to ask. That evening, as the sun dipped low, Chinedu told his mother what had happened. Nneka's eyes softened and she pulled him close. "Let them laugh, my son," she whispered. "A tree full of fruit always attracts stones. Just keep your hands clean, your heart kind, and your back straight. The gods see every child of the earth." And so, while others learned how to mock, Chinedu learned how to endure. That night the moon shone bright over Umuaka, bathing the thatched roofs in silver light. Crickets sang their endless song, and the gentle wind carried the scent of roasted yam from distant fires. Inside their small hut, Nneka and Chinedu sat close to a dim oil lamp, sharing a bowl of hot pap. "Mother," Chinedu said quietly, "why do they laugh at us? Why do they call me poor as if it were a curse?" Nneka stirred the pap slowly, her eyes thoughtful. "My son," she began, "the world often measures a man by his wrapper and his yam barn, but the gods measure a man by his heart." Chinedu looked up at her, his face glowing in the flickering light. Nneka continued, "Do you see these hands?" She held up her rough, calloused palms. "They have known hunger, pain, and hard work, but they have never stolen. That is what it means to wash your hands well." Her words sank deep, like rain into dry earth. She placed her hands gently on his shoulders. "You are not poor, Chinedu. You are being prepared. Life tests those it wishes to raise. Remember this, Oni Ruru Allah Markaya Irughi Allah, he who falls but whose spirit stands will rise again." Chinedu nodded slowly, his small heart swelling with quiet determination. Outside an owl hooted and the night grew still. Nneka smiled faintly. "Sleep, my son. Tomorrow the sun will call your name again and you must answer it with clean hands." That night, as Chinedu drifted into sleep, he dreamed of washing his hands in a river so bright it shone like glass, and beyond it, he saw the glimmering palace of the king. He didn't know it yet, but the river in his dream was the beginning of everything. The morning sun spilled gold across Umuaka as Chinedu carried a basket of roasted corn to the market for his mother. The path to Eek Market was busy with traders, women balancing trays of oranges, men leading goats, and children shouting for customers. Chinedu loved the market's energy, the smell of smoked fish, the rhythm of bargaining, the laughter that rolled like drums. He sat near Mazi Okafa's stall, an old trader known for his wide smile and sharper tongue. Chinedu, Mazi Okafa called, come and help me carry this calabash of palm oil to the shade before the sun drinks it dry. Yes, sir, Chinedu said, eager to help. He lifted the heavy calabash with care, but just as he turned, a goat bleated and darted across his path. Chinedu stumbled, and the calabash slipped from his hands. Crash! The golden oil splashed across the dust, and the broken shards gleamed in the sun. A hush fell around them. Traders turned. Mazi Okafa's smile vanished. You foolish boy, the old man roared. Do you know what you've done? That oil was worth more than your mother's hut. Chinedu's hands trembled. His throat tightened, but he bowed his head and said softly, I am sorry, Mazi, it was my fault. The trader glared at him, expecting excuses, but none came, only humility. Chinedu knelt and began to gather the broken pieces with his bare hands, his tears mixing with the spilled oil. After a long silence, Mazi Okafa sighed deeply. You are an honest boy, he said at last. Others would have run away. Come tomorrow, I will find something for you to do. As Chinedu walked home, his heart still heavy, Nneka's words echoed in his mind. A clean hand may one day dine with kings. And for the first time, he began to believe it. The next morning, Chinedu woke before dawn. The cock had not yet crowed when he washed his face, tied his mother's old wrapper around his waist, and hurried to the market. Nneka called after him, Go well, my son. Remember, a patient river never runs dry. When Chinedu reached Eek Market, Mazi Okafa was already arranging baskets of pepper and groundnut. The old trader glanced up and frowned slightly. You came back. Yes, sir, Chinedu replied. You said I should come. Mazi Okafa grunted, pretending to be annoyed, though his eyes softened. Since you did not run like a frightened fowl, I will test your spirit. Sweep my stall. Fetch water from the well. If your hands work as cleanly as your heart, perhaps they will find reward. Chinedu smiled and bowed. Yes, Mazi. All day he worked, sweeping dust, carrying loads, and helping customers with calm patience. Not once did he complain, even when the sun burned like fire. Traders watched the small boy's diligence and whispered among themselves. By evening, Mazi Okafa called him over. Nwam, come. He reached into his pocket and brought out a small carry pouch. Take this, you have earned it. Chinedu's eyes widened. Inside were 5 shiny carries, more than he had ever held at once. He wanted to refuse, but Mazi Okafa shook his head. A good hand must be encouraged. Use it wisely. Thank you, sir, Chinedu said, bowing low. As he walked home, he felt taller than the palm trees. His mother wept with joy when he placed the money in her palm. My son, she said, her voice trembling, this is the fruit of clean labor. May the gods of our fathers bless your path. That night, for the first time, Chinedu did not dream of hunger, he dreamed of hope. Every year, when the rains ended and the first yams ripened, Umuaka celebrated the new yam festival, Iri Jai. It was a time of dance, laughter, and gratitude to the gods for life and harvest. The air smelled of roasted yam and palm oil, and drums echoed from one end of the village to the other. This year's festival was special. Udo, the wise and fair king of Umuaka, had announced that during the celebration he would hold a challenge for the village youths. The winner, he said, would be granted a rare opportunity, a place among the palace apprentices. When the news reached Chinedu, his heart pounded. Working in the palace, eating from the king's kitchen, it sounded like something from another world. But Obina, the rich trader's son, laughed when he heard it. You, he mocked, you'll sweep the palace floor maybe, but eat with the king, never. His friends joined in, their laughter as sharp as palm wine. Chinedu said nothing. He only looked toward the palace hill where the king's flag fluttered in the wind. On the day of the festival, the village square glowed with colors, women in bright wrappers, men in white isiagu shirts, children chasing each other with laughter. The drums spoke and the masquerades danced. When Udo appeared, the crowd fell silent. His voice boomed like distant thunder. Let the sons of Umuaka show what value lives in their hearts, he declared. Bring forth what you treasure most, that I may see which heart is richest. Whispers rippled through the crowd. Some planned to bring gold, others cloth or cattle. But Chinedu, standing quietly at the edge, frowned. He had nothing but his clean hands. The evening after the king's announcement, the village square buzzed with talk. Everyone wondered what the youths would bring to the palace for the challenge. Some whispered of precious cloth from faraway lands, others spoke of money hidden in clay pots. But no one spoke louder than Obina, son of Mazi Eek, the wealthiest trader in Umuaka. He stood at the center of the gathering, his chest puffed out like a proud rooster. "I will bring something that will blind the king's eyes with its shine," he declared. "My father's gold beads are enough to fill 3 gourds." The crowd cheered and nodded approvingly. "Obina will surely win," someone shouted. Chinedu stood at the edge, silent. Obina's sharp eyes found him. "And you, corn seller's son," he sneered, "what will you bring to the king, a broken pot, or the smell of roasted corn?" Laughter rippled through the crowd. Chinedu's ears burned, but his mother's voice echoed in his heart. "A clean hand will one day eat with kings." He met Obina's eyes and said calmly, "I will bring what I have." Obina smirked. "And what is that, pauper?" Chinedu looked down at his hands, then back at him. "My heart," he said simply. For a moment Obina was silent, then he threw back his head and laughed. "Your heart cannot buy you a seat in the palace." But Elder Ofogbu, who sat nearby beneath the old Udala tree, stroked his grey beard and murmured, "We shall see whose offering shines longer, gold or goodness." Obina waved dismissively and strutted off, his fine sandals raising dust. Chinedu remained where he was, his gaze turned toward the palace hill, where the setting sun painted the sky in shades of promise. The next morning, Umuaka stirred early. Birds called from the palm trees, and women swept the compounds in preparation for the great day. But while the village buzzed with plans and gossip, Elder Ofogbu sat beneath the Udala tree, watching in silence. He was one of the oldest men in the land, his beard as white as the moonlight. His eyes, though dim, saw deeper than most. They saw the truth hidden behind wealth and the pride that often disguised foolishness. As Chinedu passed by, carrying a small bundle of firewood for his mother, the elder called out, "Enwam, come here." Chinedu bowed respectfully. "Good morning, elder." Ofogbu studied him for a moment. "You were in the square yesterday, eh?" "Yes, sir." "And what will you bring before the king?" the elder asked, his voice soft but probing. Chinedu hesitated. "I do not yet know, elder. I have no gold, no goats, no cloth, only my hands and my mother's words." The old man smiled faintly. "Then you already carry what many rich men lack." Chinedu looked puzzled. "I don't understand." The elder chuckled quietly. "You will. The river does not boast of its depth, it simply flows. When a man's heart is clean, even the gods notice his footsteps." Chinedu's eyes widened with respect. "Thank you, elder." Ofogbu nodded and waved him off. "Go and help your mother, but remember this day, when your hands are clean, even the ground will lift you." As Chinedu walked away, the elder watched him go, stroking his beard. "The gods move quietly," he murmured to himself, "and sometimes they wear the face of a poor boy." The great day arrived. From every corner of Umuaka, drums thundered, horns blared, and people gathered in the village square before the palace gates. The air was thick with excitement, dust, and the smell of roasted yam. At the center sat Udo, the king, dressed in a flowing white robe embroidered with red beads. His golden staff rested across his knees. Beside him stood the chiefs, the elders, council, and Elder Ofogbu, who watched quietly from his wooden stool. The king raised his hand, and silence fell like a heavy blanket. "My sons of Umuaka," he said, his voice rich and calm, "our land is blessed with strength and beauty. But true wealth lies not in gold or cattle. Today I will see which heart among you carries the truest value." He pointed toward the crowd. "Each youth shall bring forth what he treasures most. Let me see whose heart shines brightest before men and gods alike." The crowd murmured in awe. Obina was the first to step forward. He wore a bright red wrapper and gold beads that glistened in the sun. "Your Majesty," he said proudly, "I bring this," and unveiled a small chest of glittering ornaments. The people gasped. Udo nodded but said nothing. One by one, other boys came forward, some with cloth, some with cattle, some with precious stones. Each bowed deeply and stepped aside, their eyes hopeful. Then came Chinedu. The crowd fell silent. He carried nothing in his hands, only a small clay bowl of clear river water. Obina snorted. "He brings water, has the palace run dry?" But Chinedu bowed deeply and said, "Your Majesty, I bring the only thing I have, clean water, fetched with clean hands. It is a symbol that a man's heart, if pure, can reflect the face of a king." The crowd gasped again, this time not from laughter but from quiet wonder. And the king's eyes gleamed with thought. After the king's challenge, Yumuaka buzzed with chatter. Some laughed at Chindu's humble offering, others whispered that perhaps the boy's words had stirred something in the king's heart, but no one knew for sure. That night, as the moon glowed pale over the rooftops, Chindu sat outside his mother's hut, staring into the small fire that crackled before him. His thoughts were heavy. What if I have shamed myself before the king? He wondered. What if the people laugh at me forever? He looked at his hands, rough, blistered but clean. They were all he had. Enneka came and sat beside him, wrapping her shawl tightly around her shoulders. "You are quiet tonight, my son," she said softly. "I have nothing to offer the king," Chindu replied, his voice small. "Others brought gold, beads, goats. I brought only water." Enneka smiled gently, the firelight flickering in her eyes. "My child, do you know what water is? It cleanses, it gives life. Even the strongest tree drinks from it. Never despise small things that carry truth." Chindu sighed, unsure, but will the king understand? She placed a hand on his shoulder. "The heart of a good ruler sees beyond glitter. Trust your path, Chindu, the gods are not blind." He looked up at the stars scattered across the night sky, listening to the faint drums from the palace hill. Somewhere deep inside, a small flame of courage flickered again. "Tomorrow," he said finally, "I will go to the river once more. If the gods wish, they will guide my steps." Enneka smiled. "Go, my son, and remember the hands that serve humbly may one day wear the bracelets of honor." And so, before dawn, as the world still slept, Chindu rose to seek the river once more, unaware that destiny was waiting for him there. Before the first cock crowed, Chindu made his way down the narrow path to the river. Mist hung low over the trees, and the morning air was cool and silent except for the croak of distant frogs. He carried his small clay bowl, the same one he had used at the palace. When he reached the riverbank, he knelt and dipped his hands into the cool water. "Spirits of the river," he whispered, "I came with clean hands and a true heart. If I have done wrong, forgive me. If I have done right, guide me." The water rippled though there was no wind. Slowly, the ripples gathered into a gentle swirl, glowing faintly beneath the surface. Chindu froze, his breath caught in his chest. From the heart of the river rose a figure, tall, graceful, and shimmering like moonlight. Her voice was soft, yet it carried through the air like music. "Child of Enneka," she said, "do not be afraid." Chindu bowed his head low, trembling. "Are you the spirit of the river?" "I am," she replied, her hair flowing like water. "The gods have watched your heart. You brought purity before the king when others brought pride. For this you shall receive a gift, not of wealth but of wisdom." She dipped her hand into the water and lifted a small white stone, smooth and glowing faintly. "Keep this close," she said. "When you are uncertain, touch it, and your heart shall know the path that is right." Chindu received it with both hands. "Thank you, great mother." The spirit smiled, her form beginning to fade. "Remember, my child, riches shine for a moment, but goodness shines forever." Then the river grew still again, as if nothing had happened. Chindu stood in silence, clutching the stone to his chest. The sun rose behind him, turning the mist to gold, and deep within he felt a peace he had never known. The next day the palace courtyard overflowed with people. Drummers beat their talking drums, and the sun flashed off the gold ornaments of the chiefs. The king sat upon his carved stool beneath the great Udara tree, ready to see what the youths of Yumuaka had brought before him. Obina arrived first, his entrance loud and boastful. Servants followed him, carrying baskets covered with fine cloth. The crowd gasped as the coverings were lifted. Inside were beads of coral, bracelets of gold, and bright cowrie shells that sparkled like stars. Obina bowed deeply and said, "Your Majesty, I bring treasures worthy of your greatness. My father's wealth is yours to see." The people clapped and murmured, The boy is blessed." But the king only nodded slowly, his face calm, unreadable. "You have brought much," he said, "but tell me, Obina, did your hands earn these riches?" Obina hesitated, then smiled proudly. "No, your Majesty, my father's house is full. I simply took what was already ours." The king's eyes narrowed slightly, though he said nothing more. When it was Chindu's turn, the crowd grew silent. He stepped forward with a small bowl of clear water, just as before. Whispers rippled through the crowd, some amused, others curious. Chindu knelt before the king. "Your Majesty," he said, "I have nothing of gold or silver, but I bring this water clean, drawn by my own hands from the river at dawn. It is a gift that refreshes all, rich and poor alike." The king leaned forward, studying the boy's calm eyes. Around them the crowd murmured, unsure what to think. Obina snickered under his breath, whispering to his friends, "He brings river water to a king, madness." But the king's gaze lingered on Chinedu longer than on anyone else that day, thoughtful, almost moved. Somewhere in the crowd, Elder Ofogbu smiled knowingly. The courtyard of Ezudo's palace had never been so still. Even the wind seemed to pause as Chinedu knelt before the king, holding up his small bowl of water that shimmered softly in the sunlight. The king's deep voice broke the silence. "You say this is your offering?" "Yes, your majesty," Chinedu replied. "It is not much, but it is clean. I fetched it myself from the river before sunrise." Ezudo leaned forward. "And what does it mean to you, my son?" Chinedu raised his eyes, steady and calm. "Water is humble. It flows where others will not. It quenches thirst without pride. I brought it to remind us that even the greatest man must drink to live, and only clean hands can touch clean water." A murmur ran through the crowd. The elders exchanged thoughtful glances. Elder Ofogbu nodded slowly, his eyes gleaming with quiet approval. The king looked down at the bowl. For a long moment he said nothing. Then he dipped his fingers into the water, lifted them to his lips and drank. A gasp rippled through the people. No one, not even the chiefs, expected the king to drink from a peasant boy's bowl. Ezudo placed the bowl down gently. "Your water is pure," he said, "and so I believe is your heart. Remember, my people, gold glitters for the eyes, but water gives life to all." The crowd erupted in applause. Some shouted blessings, others whispered that surely the gods had touched this boy. Obina's smile faded as he watched the king rise and place a hand on Chinedu's shoulder. "From today," the king declared, "this boy shall dine at the palace as one of my young attendants." Chinedu bowed low, tears shining in his eyes. The king's final words echoed through the courtyard. "When a man washes his hands well, he may indeed eat with kings." The sun had climbed high, and the drums softened into a steady rhythm as the king rose from his stool. His golden staff glimmered in the light, commanding the crowd's silence. "My people," he began, his voice calm yet firm, "we have seen the hearts of our sons today. One came with treasures of gold and coral, another with a bowl of clean water. But it is not what a man brings that matters, it is what lives inside him." He turned his gaze toward Obina, who stood stiffly with pride wounded but not broken. "You, Obina, have much wealth, yet you spoke of your father's riches and not of your own labor. The palm tree that grows tall does not forget its roots." Obina bowed slightly, unable to meet the king's eyes. Then Ezudo faced Chinedu, who knelt quietly at the foot of the dais. "And you, Chinedu, you brought what is simple but pure. Tell me, if I were to send you into my fields or among my people, what would you do?" Chinedu lifted his head slowly. "I would serve your majesty with my hands and with truth. I would honor the trust you place in me." A ripple of approval spread through the elders. Elder Ofogbu leaned toward the other council members and whispered, "That one speaks like one who will one day lead." The king nodded. "Very well, then your first task as a servant of the palace will begin tomorrow. You will work beside my attendants not as one of wealth but as one of diligence." The crowd clapped and women ululated in celebration. But not everyone rejoiced. Obina's mother, seated among the wealthy women, whispered sharply, "A poor boy in the palace, unheard of." Still the king lifted his staff high. "Let this day be remembered," he declared, "not for the riches displayed but for the lesson it has taught, that character lifts a man higher than gold ever can." As the drums resumed, Chinedu bowed deeply, his heart full of gratitude. The journey of the poor boy had just begun, and unseen eyes of envy and fate were watching closely. The morning after the king's judgment, Umuaka village awoke to news that spread faster than the Harmattan wind. The poor widow's son would now serve in the king's palace. Children ran through the dusty paths shouting Chinedu's name, and old women at the market clapped their hands in surprise. Some praised his humility, others whispered, wondering how long a poor boy could survive among nobles. Chinedu's mother Nneka could hardly speak. Tears glistened in her eyes as she tied his wrapper and placed a small carved amulet around his neck. "My son," she said softly, "remember who you are. The palace is big, but even a small pot of truth can fill it with fragrance." Chinedu nodded and knelt before her. "I will not forget, Mama, I will serve well." When he reached the palace gates, the guards eyed him curiously, a boy in simple cloth, holding only a small bundle of clothes and a wooden spoon. But Elder Ofogbu, who had been sent to guide him, smiled warmly. Do not fear, the old man said. The palace has seen many who entered rich and left empty, but those who come with a clean heart always leave with honor. Inside, the palace shimmered with life, drummers practicing rhythms, servants hurrying with calabashes of palm wine, and young attendants polishing bronze masks. Chinedu was shown to a small room near the kitchen, simple but clean. That evening he ate with the other servants, who eyed him curiously. One of them, Adayabai, smiled kindly and whispered, "You're the boy who brought water to the king, aren't you?" Chinedu nodded shyly. "Then remember," she said, "water finds its way through rock, you will find yours too." As night fell, Chinedu lay awake on his mat, staring at the flickering oil lamp. The palace was full of noise, yet deep in his heart, he felt a calm certainty. His journey had only just begun, and the gods were not yet done with him. Within days, Chinedu began to learn the rhythm of palace life. The clang of pots from the kitchen, the rustle of royal robes, and the footsteps that echoed through the long marble corridors. He scrubbed floors, fetched water, and carried trays during the king's meals. He worked quietly, never complaining, and always greeted others with a smile. But not everyone was pleased with his presence. Among the king's young attendants was Ezekwem, a proud and sharp-tongued boy who had long believed he would be chosen as the chief attendant one day. He watched Chinedu's diligence with thinly veiled disdain. "Look at him," Ezekwem whispered to his friend Icona, "the boy of no name, acting as though he belongs among us." Icona shrugged. "The king seems to favor him. Did you not see how he spoke to him yesterday?" Ezekwem's eyes narrowed. "Favor fades quickly. Let us see how long he lasts once the real work begins." Meanwhile, Chinedu continued as if he heard nothing. When others gossiped, he kept silent. When they mocked, he smiled. And slowly, some of the older servants began to respect him. One evening, as the servants cleaned the courtyard lamps, Elder Ofogbu entered quietly and beckoned Chinedu aside. "Enwam, how do you find life here?" Chinedu bowed. "It is full of lessons, Elder. I am learning patience." The elder chuckled softly. "Good, patience is the root of greatness. But remember, where light shines, shadows gather. Keep your heart guarded, for envy walks quietly." Chinedu nodded, though he did not fully understand. Later that night, as he washed the last of the dishes under the moonlight, he heard faint laughter, Ezekwem and Icona whispering behind the wall. "Tomorrow," Ezekwem said, "we shall see if the king still praises his little water boy." Chinedu paused, the cold water dripping from his hands. For the first time since he arrived, he felt a chill that did not come from the night air. The next morning, the palace was alive with preparation. Ezudo had ordered a special meal to be served in honor of a visiting chief from a neighboring village. The air was thick with the aroma of roasted yam and spicy pepper soup. Chinedu was assigned to carry a calabash of palm wine from the royal storeroom to the king's hall, a task of great trust. Elder Ofogbu himself had said, "Handle it carefully, my boy. The king values truth more than any drink." Chinedu nodded eagerly and lifted the calabash with both hands. Its sides were smooth and golden, carved with sacred symbols. But as he stepped into the open courtyard, Ezekwem appeared with a sly smile. "Ah, Chinedu," he said, pretending concern, "that calabash looks heavy, let me help you." Chinedu shook his head politely. "No, thank you, I can manage." Ezekwem stepped closer, lowering his voice. "Are you afraid I'll drop it?" "I only wish to do the task myself," Chinedu replied, moving past him. But as he did, Ezekwem stretched his foot slightly, just enough. Chinedu stumbled. The calabash slipped from his grip, shattering against the stone floor. Palm wine spilled everywhere, sparkling in the sun like liquid gold. A sharp gasp rose from the servants nearby. Ezekwem put on a face of shock. "Oh, what have you done?" he cried loudly. "You've broken the king's wine." Chinedu stood frozen, his heart pounding. He wanted to speak, to explain, but the guards were already approaching. "What happened here?" one demanded. Before Chinedu could answer, Ezekwem stepped forward, shaking his head sadly. "It was his carelessness, my lord. I tried to help, but he refused." The guard frowned. "The king will hear of this." Chinedu bowed his head. "It was not carelessness," he said softly, "but I will accept whatever punishment is just." Ezekwem smirked slightly, hiding his satisfaction. As Chinedu knelt to gather the broken pieces, Elder Ofogbu appeared at the far end of the courtyard, watching silently, his eyes unreadable. He said nothing then, but deep within, he knew the truth would not stay buried for long. When word reached Esudo that the royal calabash had been broken, his voice thundered through the palace like the sound of distant drums. "Bring the boy to me," he commanded. The guards led Chinedu into the throne room. He knelt quickly, his forehead touching the cold floor. The king's eyes, usually calm and kind, were now sharp and heavy with disappointment. "Chinedu," the king said, "I trusted you with something sacred. Tell me, how did it break?" Chinedu lifted his head slightly. "Your Majesty, it slipped from my hands." "Was it carelessness?" the king pressed. "No, Your Majesty," Chinedu replied quietly. "But I will not speak against anyone. The calabash broke in my care, and for that I take responsibility." The king studied him for a long moment. You admit fault but do not defend yourself. Interesting." From the corner of the room, Ezekwem stepped forward and bowed deeply. "Your Majesty," he said, his tone full of false sympathy, "I was nearby. I saw him stumble. He refused my help." A murmur rippled through the room. Elder Ofogbu, who stood among the elders, folded his hands behind his back but said nothing. Esudo sighed and turned to the guards. "The broken calabash cannot be mended. Let the boy be sent to the royal farm for 7 days. He will work there to learn carefulness." Chinedu bowed his head. "I understand, Your Majesty." As the guards led him away, Elder Ofogbu's voice rose gently. "Your Majesty, if I may speak." But the king raised his hand. "Not now, Elder, the matter is settled." Outside, the courtyard buzzed with gossip. Some servants pitied Chinedu, others smirked at his fall, but the boy said nothing. He simply picked up his small bundle and walked quietly toward the royal farm, his bare feet leaving prints in the dust. From a distance, Elder Ofogbu watched him go, his old eyes glinting with quiet wisdom. "Let the storm come," he murmured. "The truth, like oil, always floats to the top." The royal farm stretched wide beneath the hot sun, rows of yam mounds, cassava and maize dancing in the breeze. For 7 days, Chinedu worked from dawn until dusk, his palms blistered, his back aching. Yet he never complained. The other workers, surprised by his humility, began to respect him. Mama Ifoma, the farm's overseer, watched him closely. "You work like someone planting more than yam," she said one afternoon. Chinedu smiled faintly. "Maybe I am, Mama, maybe I am planting patience." Each evening, when others rested, he sat by the riverbank and washed his hands with care, remembering the king's words. When a man washes his hands well, he may eat with kings. On the 7th day, as the sun dipped low, Elder Ofogbu came quietly to the fields. He watched Chinedu gathering the last bundle of cassava and nodded in approval. "The king has eyes," the elder said, "but wisdom sometimes makes him wait before seeing clearly." Chinedu bowed respectfully. "I have no anger in me, elder, only hope." The elder smiled. "Then your hands remain clean, my boy, and soon those who dirtied theirs will tremble before the truth." That night, as the workers slept, a whisper moved through the palm trees, carried by the wind itself. Some said the gods had seen the boy's patience and were moving quietly to restore his honor. And in the palace, Ezekwem's pride began to shake, though he did not yet know why. That night the moon sat high above Umuaka, bathing the palace in silver light. Most of the servants were asleep, but Elder Ofogbu remained awake, packing the courtyard. His mind would not rest, something about the broken calabash still troubled him. He walked toward the storeroom where the accident had happened. The ground still bore faint stains of palm wine. As he studied the place, he noticed something, a footprint near the wall, smaller than the guard, and turned sideways, as though someone had been hiding there. The elder smiled faintly. "Ah, the truth leaves footprints, even when lies try to cover them." At that very moment, Ezekwem and Ikena crept through the corridor, whispering nervously. They had thought everyone asleep, but the elder's sharp ears caught the sound. "Who goes there?" Ofogbu called. The boys froze. Ezekwem stammered, "Elder, we were just—" "Just what?" the old man interrupted, stepping closer. His eyes gleamed in the moonlight. "Perhaps walking where you shouldn't be." Ezekwem swallowed hard but said nothing. Ofogbu studied him for a long moment. "Do not fear me, boy," he said finally. "But remember, a lie may walk fast, but truth walks far." When he left them trembling in the shadows, the elder already knew what he would tell the king come morning. Far away on the royal farm, Chinedu looked up at that same moon and whispered, "If my heart is clean, let the truth find me." And the wind that passed through the trees seemed to answer softly, "It will." At dawn, the palace awoke to the sound of drums summoning the council. Elder Ofogbu had requested an urgent audience with Yudo. The king, curious, sat upon his stool, his staff resting across his knees. "Elder," he said, "you look troubled. What matter brings you so early?" Ofogbu bowed deeply. "Your Majesty, forgive my boldness, but truth does not sleep. I have come to speak of the boy chinedu." The king's face hardened slightly. "What of him?" The elder met his gaze. "I went to the storeroom last night. I saw footprints, not of one who carried the calabash, but of one who stood waiting, hidden. It was no accident, my king. The boy was tricked." A murmur rippled among the gathered chiefs. The king frowned. "You are certain of this?" Ofogbu nodded. "I am old, but my eyes are not blind to deceit. I also met 2 of your attendants in the corridor, boys who trembled like goats before thunder. One of them wears guilt heavier than gold." The king sat back in silence. Slowly his anger began to cool, replaced by thoughtfulness. "You speak wisely, elder," he said at last. "If your words are true, justice must follow." Ofogbu bowed again. "Then send for the boy, my king. Let his hands be seen for what they are, clean." The king rose, striking the floor once with his staff. "Guards, summon chinedu from the royal farm at once, and bring all my attendants before me when the sun reaches its height." The drums began again, this time not for punishment but for truth. By midday, word reached the royal farm that Yudo had summoned chinedu back to the palace. The workers paused their digging as Mama Ifoma approached him, her rapid high and her eyes wide with pride. "You see, my son," she said, "the gods do not forget the innocent. Go walk with your head high." Chinedu bowed slightly. "Thank you, Mama, I only pray that truth speaks for itself." He washed his hands in the river one last time, the white stone from the river woman warm in his palm. Then he set out on the long path toward the palace, each step steady and quiet. Back at the palace, the great courtyard was already filled. The king sat in judgment, surrounded by elders, guards, and servants. Ezekwim and Icona stood to one side, their faces tense. When Chinedu arrived, he bowed deeply before the throne. "Your Majesty, you called for me." Yudo's voice was calm. "Indeed, I did. I have heard new things about the matter of the broken calabash. You will speak your truth, and so will those who stood near you that day." Chinedu nodded silently. The king turned his gaze toward Ezekwim. "And you, Ezekwim, you shall also speak. But remember, the tongue that lies before a king burns faster than dry leaves." The courtyard grew still. Even the birds on the trees seemed to pause. Elder Ofogbu folded his hands and whispered to himself, "Now, let truth do what truth does best, rise." The courtyard was so silent that even the whisper of the wind seemed afraid to speak. Yudo leaned forward on his stool, his staff resting across his knees. "Now," he said firmly, "let truth stand." Chinedu rose slowly. "Your Majesty," he began, "I was carrying the calabash with both hands when it fell. I did not wish to accuse anyone, for I feared it would sound like pride. But I know I did not stumble on my own." His calm voice carried across the courtyard. The king nodded and turned to Ezekwim. "You were there, tell us what you saw." Ezekwim's mouth felt dry. I saw him trip, Your Majesty, it was not my fault." The king's gaze hardened. "And yet Elder Ofogbu found footprints behind the wall, small, turned sideways. Were they?" Ezekwim froze. Icona, trembling beside him, suddenly dropped to his knees. "Your Majesty, forgive us," he cried. "It was an accident. Ezekwim only wanted to shame him a little. He didn't mean for the calabash to break." A collective gasp swept through the crowd. Ezekwim's face went pale. I didn't mean." But the king raised his staff, silencing him. "Enough, the truth has spoken." He turned to Chinedu. "You held your peace when lies surrounded you. That is the strength of a true man." Then, facing Ezekwim, he said coldly, "Envy is a poison that eats its owner first." The boy bowed his head in shame, trembling. The courtyard erupted in whispers. The poor boy had been proven blameless before all. Elder Ofogbu smiled faintly. "As I said," he murmured, "truth walks slowly, but it never loses its way." The courtyard remained hushed as Yudo rose to his feet. His golden staff gleamed beneath the afternoon sun, and all eyes turned toward him. "Today," the king said slowly, "we have seen that truth may bend, but it never breaks. And we have seen that character, not wealth, brings a man before kings." He gestured for Chinedu to step forward. The boy approached and knelt humbly, his head bowed. "You came to this palace with nothing but a bowl of water," the king continued, and you have proven cleaner in heart than many who wear silk. For this I honor you." Gasps rippled through the crowd as the king removed the beaded wristband from his arm, a symbol of trust and service, and placed it on Chindu's wrist. "From this day," Yudo declared, "Chindu, son of Enneka, shall serve not as a mere attendant, but as my personal aide, keeper of the royal chambers and student of the council." The crowd erupted in cheers. Some shouted his name, others clapped their hands and danced. Elder Ofogbu smiled proudly. "When a man washes his hands well," he said, "even kings will call him son." But not everyone rejoiced. Ezekwem bowed low in shame, his pride shattered. The king's voice softened as he addressed him. "Let this be your lesson, boy. Pride and deceit build no house. Go and cleanse your heart before you return to this court." Chindu touched his forehead to the ground. "Thank you, my king. I will serve with all that I am." The drums thundered once more, this time not for punishment, but for honor earned by truth. That evening the palace came alive with music and laughter. The king had declared a feast of honor for Chindu, and the courtyards glowed with firelight. Drummers beat their talking drums, dancers swayed in colorful wrappers, and the scent of roasted goat filled the air. At the center of it all sat Yudo, smiling proudly, and beside him, to everyone's amazement, sat Chindu, dressed in clean new cloth woven in royal colors. When he first sat, Chindu hesitated, unsure if he truly belonged among nobles. But the king leaned close and whispered, "A humble heart does not beg for its seat, it earns it." Across the courtyard, Elder Ofogbu raised his calabash of palm wine. "Let it be said throughout Umuaka," he proclaimed, "that the gods bless clean hands. The boy who brought water now drinks with kings." The people cheered. Even Enneka, Chindu's mother, who had been brought to the palace by royal escort, could not hold back her tears. "My son," she said softly, holding his hand, "your father would be proud. You have made our name pure again." Chindu smiled and bowed. "I only did what you taught me, Mama, to keep my hands clean, even when the world is dirty." The drums grew louder, and the night shimmered with joy. But amid the laughter, Ezekwem watched from afar, his heart heavy with regret. For the first time he understood that honor cannot be stolen, it must be earned. And so, beneath the moonlit sky, the boy who once carried water dined among kings. While the palace celebrated deep into the night, Ezekwem could not join the laughter. He slipped quietly through the back gate, his heart a storm of shame and regret. The boy who once mocked Chindu now walked barefoot through the dark paths of Umuaka, haunted by his own pride. When he reached the riverbank, he sat beside the calm water and wept. "I only wanted to be noticed," he whispered to the river, "but my envy has made me small." An old woman gathering herbs nearby overheard him. Her back was bent, but her eyes gleamed with wisdom. "My son," she said gently, "the river teaches us something. When it becomes proud and tries to rise above its banks, it floods and destroys. But when it stays humble, it gives life to all." Ezekwem looked up, tears in his eyes. "Can a man who has erred be clean again?" The old woman smiled. "The same water that washes the body can wash the heart if you let it." The next morning he returned to the palace courtyard. As Chindu and Enneka prepared to leave, he approached them slowly, head bowed. "Chindu," he said, voice trembling, "I wronged you deeply. I let jealousy blind me. Can you ever forgive me?" Chindu looked at him for a moment, then placed a hand on his shoulder. "Ezekwem, a clean hand is not one that never touched dirt, it is one that washed after touching it." Tears filled Ezekwem's eyes. "Then I will wash and keep washing until I am clean." From that day their friendship began again, not as rivals, but as brothers shaped by humility. A few days after the feast, Chindu walked once more to the river where his journey had begun. The morning mist curled gently above the water, and birds sang softly from the trees. He knelt by the familiar spot, where he had once fetched water for the palace, and met the strange river woman who gave him the white stone. From his pocket he brought out the smooth stone, still gleaming faintly, as if it held its own light. "Mother of the waters," he said softly, "you told me to keep my hands clean and my path would open. Truly your words have come to pass." The river rippled, though no wind blew. A gentle voice rose from the water, calm and deep. "You have walked the path of truth, child," said the river woman, her reflection shimmering on the surface. "You did not trade honesty for comfort, nor pride for favor. Now you understand it is not the washing of hands alone, but the washing of the heart that lifts a man." Chindu bowed low, I thank you, Mother of the Waters. Take this, she said. From the depths of the water emerged a small gourd carved with intricate marks. Wherever you pour water from this gourd, may peace follow. Chinedu accepted it with reverence. As the reflection faded, he whispered, I will never forget. He stood, watching the river flow, its current calm and sure like his own heart. And as the sun rose higher, the light caught the stone in his hand, glowing softly, a reminder that purity, once chosen, never loses its shine. When Chinedu finally returned to Umuaka, the village that once whispered behind his back welcomed him with open arms. The drums that beat for gossip now throbbed for joy. Children ran beside him, chanting his name. Women waved from their huts, and old men lifted their walking sticks in blessing. Even the palm trees seemed to sway proudly, as though they too had waited for this moment. At the heart of the village stood Mama Nneka, her eyes bright with tears and laughter. When she saw her son, she spread her arms wide. My son, the child of my heart, she cried. You left a boy and returned a man. Chinedu knelt before her, pressing his forehead to her feet. Mama, your prayers were my shield. You taught me that a man's worth is not in his riches, but in his hands. She cupped his face, and now the world has seen what I always knew. The villagers gathered around, eager to hear his tale. Chinedu told them of the king, the trial, and the truth that triumphed over envy. But when they asked how he found his strength, he smiled and said, I only did what any man should, I washed my hands. That night they lit a great fire in the village square. The elders declared that Chinedu's story would be told to children yet unborn, a reminder that honesty and humility never go unrewarded. As the flames danced high into the night, Elder Ofogbu raised his voice and said, Let it be known, the clean-handed boy of Umuaka has dined with kings. And the crowd roared in agreement. Several moons after Chinedu's return, a great dust rose along the road leading into Umuaka. Children ran ahead, shouting, The king is coming, the king is coming. Drums sounded from the hills, and the villagers gathered in awe as Ezudo himself entered the village, not in a chariot but on foot, surrounded by only a few guards. His robe shimmered like morning dew, yet his face was calm and kind. When he reached the square, he found Chinedu and Mama Nneka waiting. Both knelt deeply. Rise, my son, said the king. How could I feast under my roof and not greet the home that raised a jewel? Chinedu bowed again. Your Majesty honors me beyond words. The king turned to the crowd. People of Umuaka, your son has served me well. He is as faithful as the morning sun and as clean in heart as the river that birthed him. Cheers erupted across the square. Then the king placed his staff lightly on Chinedu's shoulder. I have come with a message. From this day I name him keeper of the king's seal, a man of trust whose words shall carry royal weight. Tears filled Mama Nneka's eyes. The gods have remembered my house, she whispered. Ezudo smiled. No, good mother, it is your son's character that called the gods' attention. And for the first time in living memory, the king shared a humble meal in the home of a commoner. As they ate, he said quietly to Chinedu, Never forget, my son, greatness walks best when it walks barefoot. As the sun dipped low that evening, the village square of Umuaka pulsed with the rhythm of drums. But these were not drums of war or celebration. They were drums of remembrance, deep and slow, like the heartbeat of the earth itself. Elder Ofogbu stood at the center, holding an old carved drum that had belonged to his ancestors. Each beat, he told the gathering crowd, carries a story. Tonight we carve Chinedu's name among the songs of the righteous. He struck the drum once, thumb. First for the boy who carried water without complaint. He struck again, thumb. Then for the youth who faced shame without bitterness. A third beat, thumb. And finally for the man who rose not by gold or bloodline, but by the cleanliness of his heart. The crowd echoed the rhythm with claps and chants. Chinedu, Chinedu, the boy who washed his hands. Chinedu stood quietly beside his mother, humbled by their voices. Elder, he said softly, I did nothing great, I only did what was right. Ofogbu smiled. And that, my son, is what makes it great. Many see right but choose wrong. You saw right and held on. He handed Chinedu a small drum. Keep it, for every man must beat his own drum with honor. As Chinedu struck it gently, the sound seemed to blend with the evening wind, carrying his story beyond Umuaka, beyond his time. And in that moment, the villagers knew, the clean hands of one man had washed the face of their whole village. One season later, a great storm struck Umuaka. The skis roared like angry spirits and the river swelled beyond its banks. Roofs were torn, farmlands drowned, and fear gripped every heart. The villagers rushed to the shrine, calling on the gods for mercy, but the storm raged on. Then Elder Ofogbu remembered the gourd the river woman had given Chinedu. "Fetch the boy," he cried, "the one the river blessed." Chinedu came, clutching the carved gourd close to his chest. Rain beat against his face, yet his steps were steady. Standing at the edge of the river, he lifted the gourd and whispered, "Mother of the waters, your child calls. Let peace return to the land." He poured a stream of water from the gourd into the raging current. Instantly, the wind softened. The thunder rolled away, and the river calmed as though soothed by a mother's touch. The people fell to their knees in awe. Elder Ofogbu's voice trembled. "It is not magic that saved us," he said, "but the purity of the one who carried the gourd." The storm ended with a gentle rain, a cleansing rain. And when the sun broke through the clouds, its light shone on Chinedu like a crown of gold. Mama Nneka wept softly. "When a child's heart is clean," she said, "even the storm listens." Seasons passed, and Chinedu became known across the lands as the man of clean hands. Kings sought his counsel, and traders blessed his name. Yet he never forgot the dusty paths of Umuaka or the wisdom of his mother's hut. One evening he sat beneath the great Udara tree, watching children play by the river. A young boy approached him shyly. "Papa Chinedu," he said, "is it true you once carried water for the king?" Chinedu smiled, his eyes soft. "Yes, my son, and I still do, though the vessel has changed." The boy frowned. "I don't understand." He chuckled. "You see, the one who carries truth carries the purest water. Keep your heart clean, and one day even kings will drink from your hands." The boy nodded, eyes wide with wonder. As night settled over the village, the elders gathered around the fire and retold Chinedu's story, the tale of the poor boy who rose not by wealth, but by character. Elder Ofogbu, now grey and bent, spoke the final words slowly, his voice steady as the earth itself. "When a man washes his hands well, he may eat with kings. But when he washes his heart, he becomes one." The fire crackled, the drums softened, and the stars shimmered over Umuaka, where a boy named Chinedu had taught generations that honor begins with clean hands.